Let's take a look at the day's business news now. And a surge in government borrowing, particularly in the domestic market, is likely to crowd out private sector credit. Global sovereign credit rating firm Moody has warned. The Treasury is expected to predominantly rely on the domestic market to meet its fiscal financing needs, piling pressure on the private sector players who are at risk of being snubbed by risk-averse banks that prefer safer lending to the government. NTV's Brian George now explains why this is a disturbing indicator for the economy.
Global sovereign credit rating firm Moody's has it that Kenya will rely predominantly on the domestic market to meet its fiscal financing needs, with approximately two-thirds of its financing, or just under 4% of the gross domestic product per year, from domestic sources. While domestic financing conditions have improved, this reliance will continue to weigh on debt affordability, a key constraint in Kenya's credit profile.
The government has recently stepped up its foray into the domestic debt market with fresh and reopened fixed income securities in infrastructure bonds and treasury bills.
For instance, the Treasury this week accelerated its domestic borrowing for the current fiscal year with a 90 billion shilling IFB sale for August. The issuance on 21st July is of a reopened 15-year IFB first sold in January 2018 and a 19-year-old IFB first sold in February 2022. If fully subscribed, the sale will see the government borrowing from the first two issuances of the year surpass the 150 billion shillings mark, having raised 66.6 billion shillings in July's oversubscribed sale of the reopened 20 and 25-year bonds, which have targeted 50 billion shillings. This, however, is against its earlier intention to exit the domestic debt market, a move that was initiated by government's move to lower the returns on bonds and treasury bills to ostensibly promote fiscal discipline, as it slowly but gradually slows down on domestic debt market to allow liquidity for private sector lending.
In fact, for a very long time, the government papers have never traded at a single-digit percentage. For the first time in a long period, we can see now 91-day treasury bills trading at 9.11%. This has come down from 16.1% in January 2024. The 182-day treasury bills rate has declined to 9.85% in February 2025 from 16.2% in January 2024.
Now, why heavy reliance on domestic financing is unsafe is because it will keep debt affordability weak despite improved domestic market conditions. While local market yields have declined, continued reliance on domestic financing will keep interest costs high.
Kenya's structural capacity for revenue generation and collection remains significantly low. In the last decade alone, revenue collection as a share of GDP reduced from 15% to 14%, and an overall collection remains at 17% as a share of GDP. Brian George Otieno, NTV, Nairobi.